Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This important program series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of a state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for 60 years.
In the 12 years that I've been hosting Louisiana Legends, I've met some remarkable Louisianians. I think perhaps my guest today is the most remarkable, and I'll tell you why. Not so much his accomplishments, which are mind-boggling, I'm about to give them to you, but in my opinion, my guest, Lodwrick Monroe Cook, Lod Cook, is the American dream. You hear about it, you read about it, you're taught it in school, but friends, I've got here with me today, incidentally, in the Lod Cook Alumni Center, the American dream. Lod, welcome to Louisiana Legends.
Thank you, Gus. Glad to be here.
Now, your beginnings were not auspicious. You started out in Castle, Louisiana. You were born near Shreveport, and then moved to the city of Grand Cane, population 300.
That's about right. I spent most of my earlier years in Grand Cane. I consider that my home, although I would go back to Castle in the summertime to visit my grandmother. And I often point out that in my high school class, for example, I was third in the class, which sounds great, but there were only 5 in the class, so that'll tell you how big the school was. But it was a great town to grow up in. It's just a marvelous experience.
Then comes time for you to start college, and both your mom and dad had attended Louisiana State University, so you came here. What was the LSU that, what'd you get from here, Lod?
Well, I often say that LSU opened up the world to me, because coming from a small town to come to this campus, even in those days, was an enormous step. I had the experience of coming here as a 4-H club member at livestock shows, and had seen the campus and had made contact with people here. So and because my father had attended, my mother actually came to LSU in later years to work on her graduate degree. But LSU offered a smorgasbord of choices, I always point out, to grow and expand and to learn and to experience things. And I just couldn't get enough of it.
In fact, you attended twice, in 50 and 1955.
Well, part of that was not only because I enjoyed being here, but I started out in engineering and decided to, after getting along about a year and a half, to switch to mathematics and take some additional coursework. And so I ended up spending 5 years because of that switch in major. Then after I got back from the service, I came back and finished my engineering degree. I was a little more focused at that point, and initially when I came here, I just wanted to, as I said earlier, get involved in everything. I probably did too many things, and my grades suffered, and I had to kind of switch to something I could handle a little better at that time.
What was your military experience like?
It was a great experience. I was very fortunate that I went to Germany directly from here in the artillery after the war, and served over there for 3 years, and enjoyed it as a lieutenant. Got a lot of additional experience of leading people and getting things done through people, which I think served me well later.
Then you went to a night school at SMU for an MBA.
Well, I was working in Dallas at the time for my company, and I had switched from engineering type work to personnel work, and I felt I should go obtain some credentials in that field, so I got an MBA in personnel management.
Now, Lod, it's 1956, and there's an opening as an engineer trainee with Atlantic Richfield. And here's what I want to ask you. 2 questions. First, what did you aspire to when you joined this company as an engineering trainee? And second, what would you have said if suddenly the heavens had opened and a voice would have said, you're going to run this big thing one day? What would your...
So I wouldn't have believed it at the time. Actually, it was the Atlantic Refining Company. Then later on, they merged with Richfield and expanded, and that expansion helped provide additional opportunities for me and others. But Atlantic recruited me here, and I accepted, and then reneged on them, and went with another company for about a year, changed my mind, and went back to Atlantic, and they were good enough to remember me and to hire me. And I started out as an engineer trainee, as you mentioned, really as a roustabout. In those days, all the engineers had to work in the field as a roustabout. And my first job was digging ditches. I knew it wouldn't last very long. It was a part of a set number of months. My main interest there was to get a job. I had married and had a daughter who was born in Mansfield, Louisiana. And my first job was in Maryville, Louisiana, right south of DeRidder. And mainly it was just to get started. I didn't have any notion of where it would take me at that point.
Then how long did it take? Because I think this will benefit many young people who are watching us today. How long did it take before you begin to have the feeling, this was 1956, hey, you know, I might not end up an engineering trainee. Maybe I've got some potential in this company.
Well, LSU figured in that again. I had a call from the personnel recruiter in Dallas saying, you're a recent LSU graduate. I'd been in the service and a little older than some of the graduates at that time. Said, would you like to go back to LSU and help us recruit? And I said, I'd love to. Anything to get out the hot sunshine digging ditches, right?
Ditches.
And so we came on a recruiting trip, and I loved it. And he called me a few weeks later, and he said, I think we have a job in Dallas you might like to be interviewed on in personnel. I said, I'd love to take a look at that. I knew I wasn't ever going to be a very good engineer, although I enjoy the certain aspects of it. So that I ended up going into personnel work at that time in Dallas. And I mentioned going to get the MBA because I felt, I've talked to young people. In fact, last night here at the Alumni Center, we had the scholarship winners, and I said, I don't have any magic formula for success. I don't think anybody does. But I do think you can help yourself by positioning yourself for success. You start off, most cases, of getting a good education, in my case at LSU. And then you continue along the way to see opportunities where you can position yourself to be available, to be there, to have people notice what you're doing. And you may have to move. In my case, I moved from Dallas to Philadelphia, and most people in Dallas thought I was crazy to move to Philadelphia. But in personnel work, that's where the jobs were, at the home office, and I knew I had to be up there. So I repositioned myself, so to speak. And I think you do that with additional education. You do that with training programs, learning how to deal with people and get things done for people.
Were there discouragements? Did you ever consider leaving that company?
Yes. I had two times. One, while I was in Dallas, I was recruited by another company, so I was tempted to go talk to them. But I soon discovered that I didn't want to make the move, and I won't identify the company. It's a great company. And then one time later on in Philadelphia, the home office, where after I'd moved, I was working in labor relations. I eventually became head of labor relations for the company and did all the union negotiations, et cetera. And my boss at the time was not an easy guy to work with. And I finally just had enough of him and decided that I'd do something else, and actually interviewed another company. But I was talked out of it, and I'm glad they did talk me out of it, and I stayed, and we were able to patch up our differences. And later on, I replaced him in the job, but he retired. And the company I interviewed, by the way, many years later, I negotiated a rather large deal with that company and told the fellow sitting across the desk that I almost ended up working for him.
Lod, I want to ask you a question because it's about an element that has fascinated me all my life. In a man who's enjoyed the astonishing success that you have, and it is astonishing, we'll go into that momentarily, how much of it would you say is luck? Just plain being in the right place, that kind of thing.
Well, timing is very important, and you have some control over that. Again, back to my point of putting yourself in position so that luck can happen, and preparing yourself for that possibility, and really selling yourself to people. Not if you wear your ambition too much on your sleeve, that can work against you. Now, I'm told that early on I said I was going to be president of the company. I don't remember saying that. I do know that I had to learn not to show my ambition. It came out early on a little too much, and I was cautioned about it. It was a good lesson. But I do think you have to, if you want to get ahead, you have to have some drive, obviously, to want to. I never did set out where I wanted to be in 5 years or 10 years. Some people even do that. But I always wanted to be, first I wanted to enjoy what I'm doing. I wanted to have fun doing it. And I wanted to align myself for something additionally if it happened. But timing is important.
So you are an engineering trainee in 1956, and just about 20 years later, 1986, Lod Cook of Castor and Grand Cane, Louisiana, becomes chairman of the board of directors and chief executive officer of ARCO. Now, friends, just to give you a quick picture of what size ARCO is, the revenues one year were $19 billion. So we're talking big time. I think it is the biggest corporation in California, is it not?
No, I would think Chevron's the biggest in California, our worthy competitor. We actually sell more gasoline in California than Chevron. We're number one. But we're up there, and one of the things I'm very proud of is that we hit $2 billion in profit in 1990, almost that 1989, and I'm told there are less than 20 companies in the history of the United States that ever reached that. We haven't done that well since then, but we at least hit that high mark at that time.
Now, Lod, you are a different type CEO. When you read your activities, they don't read like the Rockefellers or any of the people on your plane in management of great corporations, or bankers, or corporate attorneys. You were interested in the humanities and in philanthropy and in libraries. And lo and behold, for this great big oil company, you were even interested and championed the cause of conservation.
Well, my predecessors at ARCO, Bob Anderson, Thornton Bradshaw, and Bill Keesnick, established a legacy of corporate involvement in the community. We feel strongly that wherever we do business, we should be a part of that community in a meaningful way, because if the community doesn't prosper and isn't stable, then we're not going to do well. And you can certainly see evidence of that when you have civil unrest, for example, in Los Angeles, and service stations get burned down. That's not very good for business. So we think there's a role for corporations to play in the community, and we have a responsibility to do that. So I had a precedent already established, but I firmly believe in this philosophy, and I had a company that supported it. Of course, obviously, your first responsibility is the bottom line. You have to serve your stockholders well, but there are other stakeholders out there: your employees, the community itself, and your customers, and so forth. And you have to interact there too, I think, in a positive, beneficial way. I also feel very strongly that corporate leaders have to be involved in the political arena. Politics influence our lives and our businesses dramatically, so I have spent time doing that too. But I still get back to the point, if the bottom line ain't good, you can't do these things. In fact, our charitable giving is tied to a formula based on our profits, because we feel we have to do that. We don't want to get things out of line if we're not doing well for our shareholders.
You were chairman of Rebuild Los Angeles, were you not?
I am now.
You are now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What kind of a task has that been?
Well, we've refocused the effort to a more narrow scheme of things, and I think it's moving along quite nicely. I was very fortunate in obtaining President and CEO to run the operation, Linda Grego. She's doing a tremendous job. She knows the city. She's been deputy mayor. And our main thrust is job creation and to expand the economy in the neglected areas. We're not trying to deal with all the social issues, which initially Rebuild LA was trying to do, quite laudably, but it's just too big a task for what the resources we had. So we feel if we can help rebuild physically, get people to rebuild in the area, to create jobs in the area, to provide services in the area that haven't been there in the past, that overall that'll benefit and help in these other areas as well.
Is that another quality that you possess? I'm asking that is a realistic view of things. I get, for example, how you pared down your goals there. You weren't going to try and redo the wheel in Los Angeles. Have you always been a very realistic man in that
Well,
manner?
I think it's important to be realistic enough to at least have an opportunity for success. You want to be able to drive to a goal. I'm very goal oriented, and I think that goal has to be realistic. On the other hand, it has to be meaningful too. You don't want to set expectations so low that you don't accomplish anything. But when I became CEO, for example, I wanted to make it very clear, because I think it's the responsibility of any leader to let people he's working with know what he wants. So I spelled out, very simple terms, what I thought the new ARCO should become, because we were in a very depressed cycle in the oil industry. Crude prices had dropped dramatically. Fortunately, we saw it coming, got ourselves ready to restructure, went through enormous restructuring. Been doing some of that ever since. But I being an old math major, I came up with a little simple formula. 5P plus M equal NA, and NA stood for the new ARCO. M stood for marketing. Now, it maybe seems strange that you have to talk about marketing. I wasn't just talking about gasoline marketing, but I really was saying our job is to sell wherever we are and have responsibility for selling, whether it's oil, gas, coal, everything we're in. Not just to produce it, not just to find it, not just to build projects, but it was to make is really a proxy for the bottom line. The 5 Ps, who I thought were extremely important, still do, were people. You can't do anything without people. Profitability, obviously, as I said earlier, that's the first priority, is the bottom line, your return on equity, return on capital, etc. Politics, philanthropy, and planning. And I wanted to make it simple. I said, that's what we're working on in order to create this new ARCO and to reach that $2 billion, which we did.
Lod, you've known 6 presidents of the United States, beginning with President Nixon, and you've been on their libraries, their foundations. You headed President Bush's campaign for re-election. So you're on a really close personal basis with these, either those who are living, these presidents of the United States. What does it take to be president? If today you were given the job of hiring a president of the United States, you were going to interview, what are you looking for in a president?
Well, first of all, I didn't run President Bush's campaign. I was very involved in the fundraising aspect of it,
yes,
and for both his campaigns. And that's a tough question about what it takes to be president. I think there are a number of characteristics that are important. It's like, what does it take to be successful? There's a mix of things, and each one of them that I've known have been different, and yet have achieved it. And some have performed better than others. In some cases, the presidents I've known have been after they were in office, and some I've known while they were in office. Certainly, and this has been stated many times, I think a president has to want the job awfully bad. People talk about having fire in their belly. It's a grueling process to get there. It's a brutal job after you get there. Most of them I've known have enjoyed the job, though. Once they've got into it, it's a tremendous, exhilarating kind of thing, but it's also a very demanding job, obviously. I don't know that you could go out and recruit a president. He sort of has to want it so bad he emerges and almost defines himself as the candidate.
Lod, I want to ask you a trick question, and I'm giving you advance notice. Would you ever consider running for governor of Louisiana? This, after all, is your home, and you dearly love it, your state. Has that ever crossed your mind?
Oh, of course it has, but I'm past the time where that's a realistic consideration.
As one who has played the political game just a little bit, may I say you really haven't. That's the only thing you and I are going to disagree on. But at any rate, what does Louisiana need? I'm not talking about it in the person. Let's say that you could talk to a new governor, and we will have a new governor. But what would you counsel this person?
Well, I'm not an expert on all the things that might be useful and needed in Louisiana. I would make some observations. I think it's a great state, great people, a lot of pride here that can be built on. I think it has a lot of potential. It obviously, I think, has to make some hard choices about what it's trying to do as a state. But I think, for example, I do believe the state needs to re-examine its commitment to education. We don't stack up too well with the rest of the country at any level on education. And education, certainly in my life and everybody else's life, plays such a major role. And I think it, over time, benefits the state, obviously. Higher education, we need a stronger commitment in Louisiana. And then you have to talk about how you're going to pay for it. And again, I'm not an expert in this area, but I tend to think that maybe we're trying to do too many things, too many places in the state, and maybe we should have a different focus on what is it we're trying to accomplish at each campus or each location. Nobody likes to give up an institution that's in their community. I understand that, but maybe we need to have a better understanding of what is it we're trying to do. We obviously need to have an environment that attracts business and therefore would improve the revenues to the state. We have such a wonderful diversity of culture in this state. Again, a place where you can, if you consider it, and I don't want to pick any state, but a landlocked state, for example, in this country, doesn't have any of the kind of excitement and enjoyment that we can have in this state and do have. I think we need to build on the tourism aspect of the state, which I know is being done in many areas. It's a good, clean business in the day of being concerned about the environment. That's a good thing to do. I think we just have to kind of set some goals for ourselves and tap the energy that I know that's here and to realize the potential that the state could enjoy. And this is not to criticize anybody because we've gone through some tough times because the state has depended greatly in past years on oil and gas monies, which are down. It's down for my company. So you have to rethink what it is you're going to have to build on.
Lod, you've won just about every honor that a nation can present one of its citizens. But last week, you got a doozy. Would you mind telling us what it was that happened to you in England?
Well, actually, it happened over here, but it's from England, and there's a nice surprise because I wasn't expecting it. But the Queen of England awarded me the Knight of the British Empire. Actually, the full title is Knight Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. It's called a KBE. And the Prince of Wales, who I've known for about 10 years, was in Los Angeles, and he presented it to me. At the same time, he presented an award to Angela Lansbury, who was awarded the Commander of the British Empire. He does this on behalf of the Queen. She doesn't restrict the presentations just to herself. He's allowed to do that. And of course, being a friend, it was nice to have it come from him.
May I ask you what other Americans share this honor?
Well, I'm told that General Schwarzkopf and General Colin Powell and former Secretary of State Cyrus Vance are among the ones that have been awarded this award.
And I think Mr. Annenberg.
That's right, Walt Annenberg, former ambassador to Great Britain.
Lod, that's pretty hard cotton for an old boy from Castor and Grand Cane, huh?
Well, the time I was growing up there, you have to wear this with formal wear. I didn't know what a tuxedo was, I don't think, in those days. But although I did have a set of tails when I was at LSU, and you wear this one with white tie and tails. This one can be worn with any formal wear. Actually, you can wear both of them at the same time. I remember selling my set of tails to get some money to take lessons to learn how to fly an airplane. That's where that ended up.
That is really a remarkable thing and very, very beautiful. Tell me about your plans for the future. What's Lod Cook going to do when he finally takes that terrible mantle of responsibility? That it's got to be a heavyweight mantle for a corporation of that size. What do you want to do?
Well, I'm going through a transition right now. I've stayed on an extra 2 years beyond the normal retirement at our board's request. But this summer, I relinquished the role of CEO of the company. I'm still chairman. And next July 1, I will retire. I probably will stay on the board of the company. I'm on several other boards, the Lockheed board and 2 or 3 others. So I'll be continuing to do those sorts of things. I'll stay involved in the community. As you mentioned, I'm chairman of the Reagan Library. I'm a trustee of the Jimmy Carter Library. And I'm a trustee of the George Bush Library, so I'll be involved with those libraries. I've also been chairman of our central library system in L.A. Probably will continue to spend some time working on that. And then there are other opportunities that have come along. People have suggested that I might do things in a more full-time basis, and I haven't made a judgment on that yet. I'll wait and see.
So there is a possibility, though, of you doing something. You're still a young man on a full-time basis.
It's a possibility. My family would like to see me travel less and stay home more, so we'll have to...
What do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
Well, I enjoy my grandkids.
Yes. And your lovely wife.
My lovely wife, Carol.
I've had the pleasure of meeting Carol.
Spent a lot of time with Carol. I play golf. I enjoy doing that. And enjoying, you know, the friends that you have and make through the years is part of it too.
Now, friends, I want to bring the remarkable story of Lod Cook full circle. Castor, Grand Cane, the world. Lod has built a home, and he's going to spend a part of his retirement in that home. Here's a man who can live at Park Avenue or London, and guess where it's located? Would you tell our friends?
Farmerville, Louisiana, on Lake D'Arbonne. Beautiful spot, and I still have brothers and sisters in the state, nieces and nephews. A lot of them have attended LSU, and my mother lives in Farmerville when she's not in California with us. So we plan to spend a bit more time down here. I've started a tradition of bringing my children and grandchildren back to that area and to let them understand my roots.
Lod, you make every Louisianian proud, I guess every American proud. And again, I'm pleased to say this, friends, you read about it, you hear about it, Lod Cook is the American dream. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
sir.
Gus. Enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This important program series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of a state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for 60 years.